This is the North Carolina Rabbit Hole. I'm Jeremy Markovich, and behold, the carrot top of lawyering.
This is cannabis.
That, friends, is a prop. My man is, during his closing argument, holding up a baggie of what looks like marijuana, but spoiler alert, is technically not, at least if you believe him. The attorney, Benjamin Call, basically dares both the North Carolina Supreme Court justices in front of him, along with the copious members of the state's law enforcement community behind him, to come and take it. Now, credit where due, this was first noted and reported by WREL's Will Duran, and the video, which the state Supreme Court itself posted to YouTube, has surprisingly not spread widely around the internet, with the exception of the North Carolina subreddit, which is where I saw it. So, yeah, you might have some questions, like, how can this dude get away with that? Well, let's first go through what he said.
Justice Berger, back to your point, if an officer is walking down the street and smells cannabis, what happens?
Boy, that depends. I was in New York City and Boston earlier this year, and I smelled pot on practically every street corner. What happened? Nothing. Recreational marijuana has been legal in both of those places for years. In North Carolina, though, marijuana is still very much illegal. And so for a long time, if an officer walked past you and smelled weed, you were probably done for.
The thing is, this is cannabis.
Here is how the Supreme Court justices reacted to this particular moment. If you could see them, they're making all kinds of fun faces. It's a lot of resting justice face. Even so, this attorney is bringing some bold flavor. You can't just walk into a courtroom and start waving a baggie of cannabis around, right? I mean, not unless you want to get yourself arrested, right? Which maybe this guy did.
So if he's right, and if the Court of Appeals is right, then that means that any of these officers in here right now can arrest me, can search my briefcase, can seize my property, and can even go into court, swear under oath that they think that this is contraband, and get me convicted.
And now to the big finish.
And so if the people decided that I can legally possess this, well, then why should that happen?
Now, look, I don't want to judge. Maybe you are a self-trained scholar of the School of Ganja. Maybe you think Half-Baked deserve an Oscar. It is possible that you, a person of taste and culture, are still listening to Cypress Hill in the year 2025. You may already know what the issue is here, and if so, I am sorry for wasting your time. However, there is a very important and confusing distinction to make here. Cannabis is both legal and illegal in the state of North Carolina. Some cannabis is hemp, which is totally fine, and some is marijuana, which, in the eyes of state law, is very much not. What's the difference? Well, even though they come from the same species, marijuana has enough THC in it to get you high. Hemp, on its own, does not. But in many, many other ways, hemp and marijuana are the same. They come from the same species of plant, they look the same, they smell the same, and unless you're hitting the bong, there is no actual way to tell the difference. And you know who really can't tell the difference? Cops. Now, I'm not being a jerk here. The state crime lab doesn't have any equipment that can basically scan down to the molecular level to see if the shredded stuff in your baggie is hemp or if it's marijuana. Quick timeout. Technically, the lab can detect the presence of THC, but they don't know how much THC. And also, there's no field test that officers can use to figure out the difference. There's no real way to know. Now, you might be putting out strong vibes along with a strong odor, but you can always say like, nah, man, I'm just taking a pull off this here hemp and be telling the truth. Still, that does not keep police from claiming that they can tell the difference. Here is the beginning of a story from the Assembly's Michael Hewlett. Quote, 2 trained narcotics investigators for the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office made a scientifically dubious claim before a judge in October 2022 that they could smell the difference between legal hemp and illegal marijuana. Officer Jason Cleary told the judge that marijuana has a, quote, very distinct strong smell, end quote, and that hemp is, quote, not as pungent and strong as marijuana. Lieutenant Russell Davenport testified that he had attended a, quote, marijuana spotter school and that he had the training and experience to know marijuana when he smelled it. Okay, I have to pause for a second to give myself a moment to get the super cop bit from Beverly Hills Cop out of my head.
They're not just regular cops, okay? They're super cops.
Okay, we're good. Now, in this case, deputies were watching what they thought was a drug house and smelled what they assumed was pot coming from a car out front. When a teenager got in and drove away, the officers pulled him over, and the smell was all the probable cause that they thought they needed. They found a scale, a handgun, and what they thought was marijuana. But in a new world where some cannabis is legal and some is not, they couldn't be 100% sure it was marijuana. The teenager's lawyers said the officers' search was illegal. The trial court agreed and threw out the charges, but the Court of Appeals reversed that, and now the North Carolina Supreme Court has to figure it out. Now, all of this is happening because 10 years ago, North Carolina's lawmakers started a pilot program to allow people to start growing hemp legally, which some farmers started doing in 2017. Next year, 2018, the federal farm bill removed hemp from the official list of controlled substances, which also make it illegal to smoke it here. And in 2022, the state of North Carolina followed suit and permanently made hemp completely legal with almost no regulation. So, are you wondering why you see CBD-infused stuff on sale everywhere? Why there are places that are passing themselves off as dispensaries? Why there are some drinks that strongly hint that they'll get you high? It's because they have all found ways to get enough of the hallucinogenic stuff from hemp, not marijuana. An entire industry is operating on a loophole. Sort of like sweepstakes parlors back in their heyday. You can do almost anything with hemp in North Carolina, although that could be coming to an end. The governor's convening a task force to figure out what's legal and what's not. Quote, "Our state's unregulated cannabis market is the Wild West and is crying for order," according to Governor Josh Syme. But all of this currently puts police in an impossible situation. The State Bureau of Investigation stated in a memo, quote, "The unintended consequence upon passage of this bill is that marijuana will be legalized in North Carolina because law enforcement cannot distinguish between hemp and marijuana, and prosecutors could not prove the difference in court. In North Carolina, it's legal to smoke hemp, which looks and smells the same as marijuana, but is it legal for police to suspect that you're committing a crime if they see you doing so?" Back to the North Carolina Supreme Court. Now, lawyers for the state, for what it's worth, say it doesn't matter whether the smell is marijuana or hemp because legally, officers don't have to know for certain whether you're smoking or dealing drugs. They just have to reasonably suspect it. For example, if they saw you exchanging money for a baggie of white powder, they could have probable cause to detain you to figure out if what you had was cocaine or baking soda or maybe something like that. Specifically for pot, the state also cited an appeals court case from 1980, State v. Greenwood, that said the smell of weed was the only thing that you needed to conduct a further search. Now, Benjamin Call, the defense lawyer, stated that Greenwood was antiquated. Quote, "When the odor was always the color of contraband, that odor was like Popeye's spinach," he said in court. It ultimately gave them a superpowers that they otherwise did not have. And Benjamin Call, the lawyer, said he's not asking for officers to throw out all context when they decide whether they have probable cause. Hence, if you're bent over a water bong and shouting, "Look at me, I am smoking marijuana," that's probably enough context for a police officer to come over and take a closer look. The context in court, as Call was waving a baggie of cannabis around, was that Call stated he was holding hemp, not pot. If he said, "This is marijuana, haha," then it's possible that one of the glum-faced police officers in the crowd would have actually, moved. Call's point was that odor alone should not count because the same odor comes from legal and illegal products, and no nose can tell the difference. Quote, "Lawmakers have created a legal form of cannabis in North Carolina," he told the justices last week. "The question for this court is whether you are going to impose a tax on that lawful behavior, not a tax that people will be forced to pay with money, but a tax that people will be forced to pay with their constitutional rights." In conclusion, let's return to the words of Axel Foley here. For years in North Carolina, the super cop story was working. Now, depending on what the state Supreme Court decides, that may no longer be the case. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like this, I actually made a YouTube version of this story, and you can find that at NC Rabbit Hole on YouTube. Also, this is a product of the North Carolina Rabbit Hole newsletter. You will find that at ncrabbithole.com. And of course, if you really, really enjoyed this, just tell your friends about it, okay? That's all I ask. So for now, I'm Jeremy Markovich, and I'll see you next time.